My brother told me I had to share the $11,000 beach house I rented for our family reunion with his in-laws, people I had never met, or I could find somewhere else to stay. My parents said he was right, so I transferred the lease into my name alone, changed the door code, and sent him a text that said, "Enjoy the hotel down the street." When they showed up with 17 people and 6 coolers, the door didn't open. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The exhaustion had been building for months. I'm a 31-year-old occupational therapist at a pediatric rehab center in Charlotte, and the spring had been brutal in the way that only healthcare workers understand. The kind of tired that lives in your bones, not just your muscles. My caseload had ballooned after 2 colleagues left for travel positions, and I had been covering their patients on top of my own since January. By the time June arrived, I hadn't taken a real day off since Thanksgiving. The beach house was my idea, my planning, and my credit card. I had started looking at properties in February before I even told anyone, because I knew if I mentioned it first, my brother would have opinions and my mother would have requests and nothing would ever get booked. I found a place on the Outer Banks, a 7-bedroom house right on the water in Corolla, North Carolina. It had a private pool, a game room on the ground floor, an elevator between floors because my grandmother had bad knees, and a wraparound deck where you could watch the sun come up over the Atlantic. It cost me $11,200 for the week, plus the deposit and the damage waiver. I put it all on my Chase Sapphire Reserve and started paying it down immediately. I called it our family reunion because we hadn't all been together since my grandfather's funeral 2 years ago, and that barely counted. My grandmother was 79 and starting to slow down. I wanted one good week with her while we still could. I invited my parents, my grandmother, my brother Colt and his wife Tamsin, their 3 kids, and my cousin Leanna and her husband. 11 people total. Plenty of room. I had already mapped out the bedrooms, making sure my grandmother got the ground floor suite with the walk-in shower, my parents got the room with the king bed and the ocean view, and the kids had the bunk room with the television. I sent out the itinerary in a group text in April. Everyone responded with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Liana sent 3 heart emojis and asked if she could bring her air fryer. My mom said it looked wonderful and asked if there would be good seafood nearby. My grandmother called me on the phone, which she does for everything she considers important, and said, "Sweetheart, you didn't have to do all this." I told her I wanted to. My brother texted back 4 hours later. Just 3 words, "Sounds good, sis." That should have been my first signal that he hadn't actually read anything. The second signal came 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday night in early June. I was eating leftovers at my kitchen counter and scrolling through my email when the family group text lit up. My brother had sent a voice memo, which he always does when the message is too complicated for him to want to type out. I hit play. "Hey everyone, so exciting news. Tamsin's parents are going to join us for the reunion week. Also her sister Dana and Dana's boyfriend and their 2 kids. And Tamsin's aunt, Aunt Lou. She's been having a rough time, and Tamsin thought it would be good to get her out of the house. So that's, let me count, 6 more people. 7 including Aunt Lou. Actually 8 if Dana's boyfriend brings his dog, which he might. Anyway, they're super easy. They'll just need rooms. I'm thinking the top floor. Okay, talk soon." I listened to it twice. 7 additional people. 8, if you counted a dog. In a house I had rented, planned, and paid for 11 specific family members. I typed back. I kept it measured. "Hey, so that's a big addition. The house sleeps 14 comfortably, but we already have 11, so 7 more would put us at 18. That's over capacity, and it violates the rental agreement. Also, I'd need to meet Tamsin's family before committing to a week with people I don't know. Can we talk?" The dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Colt, their family. Me, their Tamsin's family. I've met her parents once at your wedding. I don't know her sister or her aunt. Colt, that's cold, honestly. Tamsin is my wife. Her family is our family. Me, I'm not saying they're not welcome in our lives. I'm saying this specific trip was planned for specific people, and I can't add 7 strangers to a house I'm responsible for without talking about it first. Tamsin entered the chat. "Tamsin, I can't believe you're calling my family strangers. We've been married for 4 years. Me, I didn't say they were strangers to you. I said they are to me. My mother appeared. Mom, sweetheart, the more the merrier. Isn't that the whole point of a reunion? Let's not start drama before the trip even happens. Dad, she has a point, kiddo. Just add a few air mattresses. I stared at the screen. Air mattresses? In an $11,000 beach house. For people I had never had a conversation with. Colt sent another voice memo. I could hear wind in the background, like he was outside on his porch. Look, I hear you, but Tamsin already told them they could come. She told them weeks ago. Her mom bought new sandals for the trip. I can't uninvite them at this point. It would devastate her family. You're the one who planned the whole thing, and you're great at logistics, so just figure out the room situation. Dana and her boyfriend can take the pull-out couch. It'll be fine. It's 1 week. He had already told them. Weeks ago. While I was still paying down the deposit, I put my phone face down on the counter and sat there for a minute. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, someone's sprinkler was going. I was the one who planned the whole thing. He had said it like it was a compliment. I picked up my phone and called my mother directly. She answered on the second ring, with the particular brightness she uses when she knows there's about to be a conflict, and she's hoping cheerfulness will neutralize it. Mom, I said, did you know Colt had already invited Tamsin's entire family before telling me? Well, I heard something about it, she said vaguely. And you didn't think to mention it? I didn't want to get in the middle of it. You know how your brother is. I know how yours is. What I don't know is why nobody thought to ask me whether this was okay, since I'm the one who signed the lease. There was a pause. I heard the television in the background, my parents' evening news. Honey, you have to understand that Tamsin's family has had a hard year. Her father had that health scare, and Dana's going through a divorce. And Aunt Lou, well, nobody really talks about it, but she lost her house in the spring and she's been couch surfing. This trip is really important to them. Something about the way she said it made me feel like I had already been assigned a role in this situation without being consulted. Mom, this trip is really important to me too. I planned it for our family. For Grandma, I spent $11,000. Money isn't the whole picture, she said. I recognized that sentence. It had a specific meaning in my family, which was, your material contributions don't earn you a vote on anything, because that would be crass. When Colt had his appendix out and didn't have insurance yet, I paid his hospital bill, I said. My voice was very even. $6,000. When you and Dad wanted to visit Europe for your anniversary, I covered the flights and the hotel deposit because you didn't want to dip into savings. I've never once said no to this family. But I planned this specific trip for specific people, and now I'm being told the plan has already changed and I should just figure out the logistics. You're so good at logistics, Mom said, which was not the response I was looking for. I'm going to talk to Colt, I said. One more time. Directly. Please don't fight with him, she said. He gets defensive. I hung up and called my brother. He answered with the slightly guilty tone of someone who already knows he's in trouble but has decided to hold the line anyway. Before you say anything, he started. I need you to uninvite them, I said. Or find a separate rental nearby. There are plenty of houses in Corolla. I can help you search. That's not going to happen. They already have time off approved. Dana's kids are excited. Her boyfriend already bought a new surfboard. Colt. She's my wife. I'm not doing that to her family. This is my trip. It's a family trip that I paid for. A pause. So you're holding the money over our heads. The familiar heat crept up the back of my neck. No. I'm telling you that when I signed the lease and put $11,000 on my card, it was for 11 specific people, not 18, not a dog. The dog probably isn't coming, he said, which was not the point. If Tamsin's family comes, I said carefully, I will not be there. And if I'm not there, I'm not paying for a house I'm not using. He laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh exactly. It was the laugh of someone who genuinely cannot imagine you following through. You're not going to cancel a family reunion over this. Grandma's coming. You're not going to do that to Grandma. I didn't say anything. Look, he said, softening slightly. Just come, be flexible. You can have your room, your grandma has her room, and everyone else figures it out. It's the beach. Nobody's inside anyway. I need an answer by Friday, I said. Either Tamsin's family finds their own rental or I cancel the lease. You won't, he said. Friday, Colt. I hung up. He did not call back by Friday. What he sent at 11:47 p.m. on Thursday night was a text in the family group chat. For everyone's info, Tamsin's family will be joining us. Tamsin deserves to have her support system there, and it's not fair to exclude them. This is supposed to be a family reunion. If someone has a problem with that, they can stay home. We're adults, and we'll figure out the sleeping situation when we get there. My mom responded, can't wait to see everyone huffed. My dad responded, road trip. Liana sent a thumbs up because she didn't want to get involved. I read the messages in bed, my phone screen bright in the dark. Someone has a problem with that, they can stay home. Okay. I opened my laptop. The rental was booked through a private property management company, which meant I had a direct contact, a property manager named Glenn, rather than dealing with an algorithm. I had his cell number from when I'd called to ask about the elevator specifications for my grandmother. I had been a good tenant before I was even a tenant. Glenn liked me. I pulled up the lease agreement I had saved in a folder called Beach House 2025. I read through it carefully, even though I had already read it 3 times when I signed it. The lease was in my name, the damage deposit was on my card. The authorized guests were listed as members of the lessee's family and invited guests at the lessee's terracin. 18 people in a 14-person maximum capacity home was a lease violation. The management company could charge me per additional guest or void the lease entirely. I had the right to modify the guest list. I had the right to change the entry code. I had the right to do exactly what I was about to do. I emailed Glenn at midnight and called him the next morning. I explained the situation without drama. I told him I needed to update the authorized guest list and change the entry code, and I needed the new code sent only to me. He was sympathetic in the way that property managers often are when the lessee is not the problem person. He updated everything and emailed me the new code by noon. I did not tell anyone. I spent that Friday in a strange quiet. I went to work. I saw my patients. I came home and made dinner and watched something on television that I couldn't tell you the title of. Every time my phone buzzed, it was the family chat, people talking about what to pack, and whether the grocery store in Corolla had good produce, and whether anyone had remembered to book a dolphin tour. They were all still assuming I was coming. I had made a reservation at a small inn in Beaufort, 3 hours south, a different part of the North Carolina coast entirely, a town I had always wanted to spend time in. I booked a room with a harbor view for the full week. I packed a bag. I loaded my car the night before. On the morning of check-in day, I drove to Beaufort. The family convoy was driving up to Corolla, my brother and Tamsin and the kids in their Tahoe, my parents in their sedan, Leanna and her husband, and separately, Tamsin's parents, her sister Dana with her boyfriend and his 2 kids, and Aunt Lou in her borrowed car. 17 people and a dog. The dog had apparently confirmed. They reached the house at 2 in the afternoon. I know the exact time because that's when my phone started vibrating without stopping. I was sitting on a dock in Beaufort eating a shrimp po' and watching a pelican negotiate with a piling. I picked up on the 4th call. It was my brother. The code doesn't work, he said. I know, I said. Silence, the kind that has weight to it. What did you do? I changed it. Grace, he started and then stopped, because I had told him my name was my name and not to use it like a weapon. He adjusted. This is insane. There are 17 people standing in a driveway. And a dog, I said. This isn't funny. I'm not laughing, I said. And I wasn't. My chest felt hollow and sad in a way I hadn't expected. Colt, I told you Friday was the deadline. I told you the options. You sent a message in the family chat saying anyone with a problem could stay home. I stayed home. You're not home. Where are you? Somewhere else. Are you serious right now? Grandma is here. She's sitting in a lawn chair in the driveway. She can't stand for long, and she's sitting in a lawn chair in a driveway because you pulled some power move with the door code. That landed. I won't pretend it didn't. The image of my grandmother in a lawn chair in a driveway was not something I had let myself fully picture. Put Glenn's number in the chat, I said. I called ahead and he knows the situation. He will let you in. But the guest list is what I agreed to. 11 people. Tamsin's family needs to find somewhere else to stay. Glenn knows that too. You talked to the property manager about our family drama? I talked to the property manager about the lease I signed, I said. Which is my right. I heard Tamsin's voice in the background, sharp and high. I heard my mother say something placating. I heard a child crying, though I couldn't tell which child. This is cruel, my brother said. You know that? This is genuinely cruel. I asked you for one thing, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I asked you to keep the trip to the people we planned it for. You told me Tamsin's support system mattered more than my boundaries. I'm not saying she was wrong to want her family there. I'm saying you didn't have the right to put them there without my agreement. You're punishing innocent people. I'm removing myself from a situation I set a clear boundary around. What happens next is a consequence of choices you made, not me. He hung up. The text that followed came in waves. My mother, please just give in the code. My dad, who rarely texted at all, this has gone too far, young lady. Tamsin, I don't have words for what you've done to my family. Liana, privately. I kind of understand. But also, this is a lot. Are you okay? I answered Liana. I did not answer the others. What I didn't know, what I was about to learn over the next 2 hours, was that the situation had layers I hadn't seen. Liana called me from inside the house. Glenn had let them in, the original 11, and Tamsin's family had been redirected to a motel in Kitty Hawk 20 minutes away, which meant my grandmother was inside, and my parents were inside, and my brother and Tamsin were inside, and Liana was inside, and also the atmosphere inside was reportedly like a fog of resentment with a high chance of passive aggression. I have to tell you something, Liana said, her voice low, like she was in a bathroom with the fan on. Tell me. Tamsin's family isn't just here for a vacation. What do you mean? Dana and her boyfriend broke up 2 months ago. She doesn't have his income anymore and she can't afford her rent. Aunt Lou lost her house. Your mom mentioned that, right? She's been at Dana's. But now Dana's place is gone too, basically. Tamsin's parents have a 2-bedroom condo in Raleigh and they're already tight. She paused. I think Tamsin told her family they could stay at the beach house for free for a week because she was trying to figure out their next steps. Like literally, what do they do next? Where do they live? I sat with that for a moment. And Colt knew this? I think Colt knew some of it. I don't know how much. But Tamsin's been under a lot of pressure. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the harbor. A sailboat was moving very slowly across the water. So this wasn't just entitled, I said, mostly to myself. No, Liana said. But it wasn't okay either. You should have been told. You should have been part of that conversation. Tamsin should have called you and explained the situation and asked, not just assumed. Why didn't she? Liana was quiet for a second. I think she was embarrassed, and I think she figured if Colt handled it and your parents backed it, you'd just go along. They had counted on me going along. The same way people always count on the person who plans things and pays for things to also absorb things. I didn't call Tamsin that night. I didn't call my brother. I ordered room service at the inn and sat on my balcony watching the lights on the water and thinking about how much easier it is to see a situation clearly when you're not standing inside it. In the morning, I called my grandmother. She picked up on the first ring. I figured you'd call, she said. I'm sorry about the driveway, I said. Oh, honey, I've sat in worse places. A pause. You want to tell me what happened? I told her. All of it, the voice memo, the Friday deadline, the property manager, Liana's information about Tamsin's family. My grandmother listened without interrupting, which is rarer than you might think. When I finished, she said, You know what your grandfather used to say about your father's side of the family? What? He said some people mistake generosity for infrastructure, like it's just a system that runs in the background. They don't think about who built it or what it cost to keep it running. They just expect the lights to come on. I didn't say anything. My throat felt tight. You were right to set a limit, she said. I wish you'd done it sooner, honestly. I've watched you write checks and solve problems for your brother since he was in college, and I've never once heard him say thank you in a way that sounded like he meant it. I don't need thank you, I said. Then what do you need? I thought about it. I needed to be asked. About the trip. About the changes. I needed someone to call me and say, hey, this situation is complicated. Can we figure it out together? Instead of just announcing it and waiting for me to adapt. That's a very reasonable need, she said. Grandma, are you okay there? Is the house nice? It's beautiful, she said. The deck is wonderful. I've been watching the ocean all morning. A beat. Come up for a day or two before the week is out. You don't have to stay the whole time. Just come see me. I drove up on Wednesday. My brother and I did not speak. Not really. He looked at me when I walked in like he was trying to decide between two different emotions and hadn't settled on one yet. My mother hugged me too hard in the way she does when she's relieved something isn't worse. My dad shook my hand, which is what he does when he doesn't know what else to do. I spent 2 days mostly with my grandmother on the deck. We drank sweet tea and watched the pelicans, and she told me stories about when she and my grandfather first got married and lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Fayetteville, and thought they were rich because they had a working television. On my last morning there, my brother knocked on my bedroom door. You got a minute? He asked. I sat up. Yeah. He came in and sat in the chair by the window. He looked out at the water for a second before looking at me. He had the expression of someone who has been practicing something in his head and is hoping the real version goes as well as the rehearsal. I should have called you, he said. When Tamsin told me about her family situation, I should have called you and been straight with you. I didn't because I knew it was a lot to ask and I didn't want to have the conversation. That wasn't fair to you. It wasn't an apology with a lot of ornamentation, it was fairly plain. But it was accurate. Tamsin should have called me too, I said. I know. She knows. She's not. It's been a hard year for her. That doesn't excuse it. No, I agreed. It doesn't. Dana and Aunt Lou are figuring things out. Tamsin's parents are helping more than they were before. It's not your problem. I'm not telling you so you'll fix it. Good, I said. Because I can't. I know. He looked back at the water. The house is really nice, by the way. You did a good job picking it. Thanks, I said. We weren't repaired. That's not how it works. Years of being the one who picks up the tab and smooths things over and adapts her plans to accommodate everyone else's needs don't disappear in a morning conversation by the ocean. But something had shifted. Slightly, in the way a foundation shifts when the ground settles. Not broken, just different than it was. In September, a few months after the trip, my mother called me to tell me Tamsin's sister Dana had found a job in Asheville and was getting back on her feet. Aunt Lou was temporarily staying with Tamsin's parents while she looked at senior living options. The situation had resolved the way most financial crises do, messily and slowly, through a combination of hard work and asking for help from the right people. My mother, to her credit, also said this. I think I let you carry too much for too long without acknowledging it. You've been good to this family. I'm sorry we took that for granted. I didn't say it was fine, because it wasn't entirely. But I told her I heard her, and I did. I've started working with a therapist who specializes in family systems. She has a dry sense of humor and a poster in her office that says, you can love someone and still have a locked door. I think about that a lot. I also thought a lot, over the following months, about the difference between being generous and being used. They can look identical from the outside. The same financial transfers, the same logistical support, the same person who figures things out. The difference lives in the interior. Whether you're giving from choice or giving from fear. Whether you believe that saying no will cost you the love, not just the harmony. I still planned the Christmas trip. Smaller this time, just my parents and my grandmother. A cabin in Asheville with a fireplace and a hot tub. No extended family. No one I'd never met. No voice memos announcing additions at 11 p.m. My grandmother called when she got the itinerary. Perfect, she said. Just us? Just us, I said. Good, she said, and I could hear her smiling through the phone. That's all I ever needed. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from being counted on in the wrong way for too long. I felt it the night I sat on that dock in Beaufort, eating a shrimp po' boy, watching my phone light up with calls I wasn't going to answer, and realizing I felt more at peace than I had in years. What happened with my brother wasn't really about a beach house. It was about a pattern that had been running so long nobody bothered to question it anymore. The pattern where I planned, I paid, I adapted, and everyone else benefited without having to ask. And the reason that pattern ran so long is because I let it. That's the part that took me months to sit with honestly. It wasn't just that my brother took too much. It's that I kept setting the table and then wondering why people kept sitting down uninvited. The cause was clear once I could see it without the fog of wanting to be loved by everyone at once. When you train people to expect your generosity without boundaries, you don't create gratitude, you create assumption. Colt didn't think he was doing something wrong when he sent that voice memo. He genuinely believed I would adapt, because I always had. The consequence of years of going along wasn't that my family respected me more. It was that they stopped being able to imagine I might say no. What finally changed things wasn't rage. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation. It was something quieter. A moment of clear thinking when I pulled up the lease agreement at midnight and read my own name on it and thought, I have the right to make a different choice. That's the kind of intelligence that doesn't come from being the smartest person in the room. It comes from being honest enough to see a situation as it actually is, not as you wish it were. Tamsin's family was in crisis. That was real. But their crisis was not my emergency to solve, especially not through a plan I hadn't agreed to. And then there's what it took to follow through. To drive to Beaufort, while 17 people stood in a driveway. To sit with my grandmother's lawn chair image and still not give in. To let the phone ring and not pick up. That's not coldness. That's the hardest kind of steadiness there is. The kind where you know exactly what it costs you and you do it anyway, because the alternative is spending another decade being useful instead of loved. My grandmother said some people mistake generosity for infrastructure. I think she's right, and I think the only way to correct that mistake is to temporarily shut the lights off, not to punish anyone, but to make visible what was always there. My brother didn't understand what I contributed until it was gone for one afternoon in a driveway in Corolla. What I know now, that I didn't know before, is that setting a limit isn't the opposite of love. It's sometimes the most honest expression of it. The refusal to participate in a dynamic that diminishes everyone involved, including the people you're supposedly protecting by going along. The Christmas cabin I booked for 3, just me, my parents, my grandmother, cost less than half what the beach house did. Nobody had to negotiate. Nobody sent voice memos at midnight. My grandmother called when she got the itinerary and said, "Perfect. Just us." That was all I ever needed to hear.